The main problem with real estate in Thailand is that you can't actually buy anything outright. You can only arrange a lease, the so-called leasehold. You, my friends, write this to me in your comments and ask, how can you invest if you can't even become an owner? I'm going to ask this question now to my friend and colleague Stanislav, an experienced broker in Phuket in the Thai real estate market. Is that really the case? Is there such a thing as ownership rights? And if there are, what are the nuances involved? That's what we'll discuss with you today.
Actually, that's not true. Of course, you can buy an apartment, a condo in full ownership, the so-called freehold. And Thai law allows us to do this. A special legal form was created specifically for this purpose, the so-called condominium. What does that mean? It means that almost half, 49% of the units in it can be sold to foreigners as full ownership as freehold. According to our statistics, about half of our clients buy leasehold and the other half buy freehold.
It's the same in Dubai. There is freehold and there is leasehold. Only in Dubai, this is determined initially by the land and the location. That is, there are entire projects there that also cannot be purchased. There's ownership and there are separate ones for foreigners. These are the projects where everything is sold as ownership. We can also compare it to Bali, where there is basically no freehold at all. And probably those people, well, those viewers who are writing about how you can't buy freehold in Thailand, maybe you're comparing it to Bali. There, things are more complicated in this regard. Everything is much more confusing and there are more problems. So in Thailand, there's this feature where in every building, in every project, on each individual plot of land, there are both leasehold and freehold options, and you can choose between them, but depending on certain conditions. So what do these conditions depend on?
Well, if we talk about my personal statistics about my clients, exactly half of them choose leasehold and exactly half choose freehold. Why? Because if it's a person's first experience investing in another country, in a foreign jurisdiction, of course, there are concerns, there are fears, and we choose freehold. It's more reliable that way. If a client has experience purchasing real estate abroad, if they are familiar with leasehold ownership rights in Europe, the UK, or even Turkey or Dubai, then they know their way around this market. They're not afraid. They enter the market and buy leasehold to save money, get a higher return, and then quickly exit the asset at a lower price.
So if a client is buying for rental purposes, obviously their yield will be higher, again by about 10%.
Yes.
Then, well, from leasehold compared to freehold. But if someone wants to resell and, for example, is worried that by the time the project is launched, the quota will already be filled and there will no longer be an opportunity to register it as freehold, will this extra payment pay off in the end? You know, the 10% you have to pay on top to have ownership rights, will it pay off when you resell? So is it actually easier to resell a freehold, and do they sell for a higher price?
It also depends a lot on the specific developer. For example, we know developers whose quotas are never fully bought out, and many of my clients reserve and make the initial payment for a leasehold, and then they have a year and a half to think about it before construction is finished, so they can switch to freehold when they get the keys.
Does it depend on the developer or maybe on the project? So, for example, if we have a purely tourist project near the sea, which is obviously being bought by everyone for rental purposes, maybe the quota there won't be used up. And if it's more of a residential property that people usually buy for themselves, then I suppose, these are just my thoughts out loud, the quota there might be filled up more quickly because people would prefer to buy. What does it depend on?
That logic makes sense. It depends on the number of sales in leasehold. So we can immediately see from the property, from the project, that most of it has been bought under leasehold. We can immediately understand that the freehold quota will still be available even after construction is finished.
So when you enter the project, you're not the first buyer, right? And you can actually look at the statistics and ask the developer how much, what share has the quota been filled as of today. And based on that, if the quota is really running out, you can draw your own conclusion and say pay extra and make that decision, right?
That's right. But not all developers share this kind of information. That's what we're here for. We have information from the market, and that's exactly why we're here.
So for each project, we can give a specific recommendation. This project is better to buy as leasehold because it's more profitable and there are no risks, right? But for another project, it's worth registering it as freehold for such and such reasons.
And here, that's right, here we smoothly transition to the point that it's still worth working with large companies. Why? If the developer is small after the project is completed, will their management company even exist to re-register the apartment as freehold? That's a big question. If we go to a large developer, a major company, we know that they won't disappear on us in a year, 2, or even 10. and we can calmly carry out such maneuvers.
In short, if any of you have even the slightest fears or doubts about this, then there's nothing to think about, right?
Yep.
You just need to buy freehold, and this 10% price difference, well, the market itself has a bigger spread than that. So roughly speaking, other factors like location, finishing, or how reputable the developer is will affect the price much more than this 10% difference. And in the end, it shouldn't play such a significant role in your decision making. Honestly, after listening to Stanislav and getting familiar with the cases myself, talking to people, I think I would choose freehold. Honestly, I would go for it. I would seriously consider that option. I don't even see a single reason to try to save money on this. Anything you save, I don't know, on furniture, like putting in some IKEA furniture after buying a premium level apartment, it's just something like that.
Yes, probably so. And you need to understand what you want the apartment for. So if you're an experienced investor and you keep an eye on the numbers and a low entry point is important to you, then of course leasehold can play that role here. Those 8, 9, 10% cutting out an extra year of payback. If you have a clear, strict plan, then leasehold will suit you. But if you're buying an apartment as a seaside getaway and maybe renting it out, letting it appreciate in value, and then selling it later, then of course freehold is the way to go.
So, what do you actually recommend to your buyers as a rule, and what would you do yourself? What decision would you make regarding freehold?
It all depends on the goal. If you are an experienced international investor and are well versed in international law, you keep a close eye on the numbers. Every percent matters to you. Of course, the lower entry point with leasehold will suit you. Then you can resell this apartment. If your goal is more like a seaside vacation home, and you might rent it out when you're not there, but mainly you want the apartment to appreciate in value over the long term, then definitely go for freehold. It's reliable. It's all very simple.
Friends, in short, there is absolutely no problem with buying property in full ownership, freehold, in Thailand. So anyone who says that you can't buy property here is simply not telling the truth. As for villas and townhouses, that is, properties that are on land, since foreigners can't register land as freehold, what about that?
That's correct. The system is the same as with condominiums. The land is leased, but the villa itself is fully owned as freehold. As a rule, all villas are sold in exactly this format.
So it turns out that I have full ownership of the villa, but it's not actually situated on my own land. Seriously, it's on the land of the Kingdom of Thailand.
That's absolutely right.
Is the land also leased for a limited period?
Yes, also for a term of 30 plus 30 plus 30 years.
And what does 30 plus 30 plus 30 mean?
There is a concept like this so that buyers feel more at ease that there is an option to extend the lease, so it doesn't just end after 30 years.
So, friends, if you contact us for real estate selection, we will only offer you those projects where there is actually a quota and where you can, if you wish, register your apartment as full ownership. Message me on WhatsApp, Telegram, or Instagram, and we will find you projects with freehold purchase quotas that fit your budget and your buying goals. This was Daniel and Stanislav talking about Phuket.